Okay, just bear with me a second here. Right, let's just see why this won't go. Okay, so there we go. Right, so the first thing I want to point out to you, on the right-hand side of your screen is a little control box with a red blocky with a white arrow in it. And if you click on it, it makes the box go away. And if you point the arrow the other way and click on it, it then opens it. And if you open it, you will see that at the bottom there is a place for questions. At any time, if you want to ask me questions, please feel free to type them in. I am not going to take questions during the presentation, but we will do our best to answer all the questions at the end. If we run out of time, because this is something which has a time limit on it, so if we do run out of time, what I will do is I will then email you the answers, because the question that you pose will come through connected to your email address that you logged in with. So let's have a look and start and see where we're going to next. Oh, again, PowerPoint has just hung up. Bear with me a seckie here, guys. Okay. Right. So let's have a look at the problem that is facing us as vets when we are financing clients' debts. Well, the first thing that we need to remember is that in most cases, by us financing debts for the clients, we are acting illegally. Now, what do I mean by financing client debts? Well, basically, if the client pays you immediately for the service that you've done, then that is fine. If, however, the client says, oh, well, I can't afford to pay all of that now, can I pay it off over 2 or 3 months? And you say, yeah, sure, no problem at all. What the National Credit Act says is that you are then entering into a credit agreement. And there are very, very strict criteria related to that. And I'm going to go through them just now. But currently, the way that most of us finance debt in our practice, we are actually acting illegally. And as we go along, as I said, you will understand that. The next thing about you financing your client's debt is that it is risky. Because, again, you'll see when we start looking into the National Credit Act, you actually have no legal way of enforcing that debt. And even if the client has signed a promise to pay, once we've been through the NCA, you will understand that that is actually not worth much, if anything at all. So you're taking a big risk. The next thing, of course, is that it's time consuming, because you as the vet have to discuss it, paying off the options. Often you'll find that the client or the receptionist doesn't have the authority to grant the credit or to agree to paying it off. So that's vet time. And guys, vets should do what only vets can do. All this other peripheral stuff should be taken away from the vet. The next part, of course, is that it's frustrating. I mean, you know that you've done the best that you can as a veterinarian. You've saved the pet, you've done whatever you can, and now you haven't been paid for your services. And besides just being really, really annoying, it's not right. But the good news to all of this is that we have an answer for you today. And hopefully in the next 40 or 45 minutes when I'm finished with this, you will agree with me that we are providing you with the opportunity of doing what we do best, and that is looking after and repairing, fixing, working on beloved pets. Now, before I start with the whole Credit Act and everything else, I want to put in a disclaimer or an important notice or whatever here. Guys, what I'm going to offer you today through Best Vet Finance does not in any way, size, shape or form replace good, sound business sense and business management. Please don't see this as an opportunity to replace all your current protocols and procedures on debt collection and everything else. That's not what it's there for. What we're trying to do today is we are trying to, first of all, stop the practice losing money. Second of all, we are trying to stop the practice losing patients that get put to sleep because of the fact that the owner can't afford it. And third of all, we are providing the owners with an opportunity to do what is best for their pets and have this, let's call it bridging finance for want of a better term. So if you run a strictly cash practice, please don't stop doing that. But if you do run a strictly cash practice, I was talking to a lady just now and one of the practices, and she said, well, you know what, we don't need this because if people don't pay, they must go away. Well, yeah, okay, I can understand that, but if they go away, so does their money. And if you've done an estimate for 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 Rand, and they go away, that money's going to go to somebody else. Yes, he's going to take the risk of them paying them off. Yes, he's going to be breaking the law, but he's still getting the income into his practice. Now, we want you to keep the income in your practice, and we want to show you a way to do it legally without frustrations. So please have a look at Best Vet Finance with the idea in mind that we are offering you yet another business tool. Okay, guys, this is really important. I can't focus on this enough. So let's start by looking at our dear friend, the National Credit Act. Now, the National Credit Act is run by the Department of Trade and Industry. And guys, if you are feeling a little bit like an insomniac and you can't sleep, do yourself a favor, get a copy of this act and start reading it. Trust me, you'll be asleep very quickly. But what I've tried to do today is just to give you the summary of it. And really the aim of the Department of Trade and Industry with the National Credit Act is simply to create something, okay, which allows the country to have stable and efficient competitive credit market. But here's the kicker, in which the consumer's rights are adequately protected. I'm going to come back to this over and over again. You need to remember that the Credit Act is not your friend if you are lending money or allowing people to pay it off. If you are the one who is getting the debt given to you or being given the money, hey, the National Credit Act is your friend completely. Bear that in mind as we go along. So what is it all about? Well, it is designed to protect the public against what the document calls over-indebtedness. Now, what does over-indebtedness mean? Well, it means different things to different people. If you're earning 1,000 Rand a month and you have to pay 500 Rand a month in repayments, that is over-indebtedness. If you're earning 1,000,000 Rand a month and you only have one debt, which is 500 Rand a month repayment, no problem. Okay, so it's anything basically that you cannot afford. The second important section of the NCA is one which deals with what are called reckless lending and disclosure regulations. And I'm going to cover that in a little bit of time when we go through. But the short version of this says that you have to, when lending somebody money, you have to disclose everything to them. And you'll see as our forms progress why we've got a lot of stuff on our forms. And it's essential that the receptionists are told to discuss these things with the client in the practice when they are talking about the Best Vet Finance loans. And then the third part of the act that is relevant to what we're talking about is what they call discouraging reckless credit granting by credit providers. In other words, it goes back again to protecting the guy that is getting the loan. Okay? So let's have a look. Here's one of the big kickers, guys, and if you're not aware of this stuff, best you become aware of it, because the National Credit Act says that the lender, which is the vet allowing the client to pay the money off, has to assess the client's ability to pay. In other words, if you say to the client, oh, I can get you a 10,000 Rand loan and you pay it back at 1,000 Rand a month, and the client says, yes, that's fabulous, and you say, can you afford it? And he says, yes, that is not sufficient. Okay, so if he fills in a form and promises to pay you that 1,000 Rand a month and he defaults on it, it doesn't mean anything according to the Credit Act. You have not assessed the client's ability to pay. Okay? The second part, as I said just now, all costs must be disclosed. Please don't hide behind, oh, well, the client might not want to pay the charges or anything else. This is a legal requirement, and if the client can show in a court case that you did not bring it to their attention, that it's not disclosed on all the forms, then they don't have to repay these loans. Yes, you heard me correctly. They don't have to repay the loan. Okay, so if you are currently allowing clients to pay off a debt, and you are adding interest and admin fee, and you didn't tell the client and show it to them in writing and get them to sign a thing saying that they acknowledge it, guess what? not only are you breaking the law, but legally that client can just say, I'm not paying it, and they don't have to pay it, but they can drag you into court, and I'll cover that again just now, which will cause you more problems. The third part of the NCA that I want us to bring up here, although it's not really relevant to us, the regulations provide for a maximum rate of interest. Now, the current maximum rate of interest of the National Credit Act is 36% per annum. Okay, this Best Vet Finance is operating at 12%, so that regulation doesn't apply here, but it is something that you need to be aware of if you're loaning money in your practice. Right, so let's have a look quickly at over-indebtedness. Okay, and the over-indebtedness, and I've copied this definition because it kind of says it, but I'll need to explain it. It says a consumer is over-indebted if the preponderance of available information at the time of determination is made indicates that the consumer is or will be unable to satisfy a timely manner all the obligations under the National Credit Act, okay, or the credit agreement, which basically means, again, you can't just say to the guy, can you afford to pay me back? And he says, yeah, no problem. You actually have to ask questions, and you have to have a preponderance of evidence. In other words, you need to look at what does he earn, get bank statements, get a copy of his pay slip, have a look at how much his car is, his bond is, and all this sort of thing. Guys, are you getting the idea here that this is really something that we as vets shouldn't be interested in? It's a real pain in the proverbial elbow. Okay. So the next part of it I want to look at, which is more relevant to what we do as vets, is credit is lent recklessly. Now, what does this mean? Well, basically what it means is that in the eyes of the law, a reckless loan is one in which the credit provider, that's you and I as veterinarians allowing clients to pay things off, took no steps to assess the proposed consumer's general understanding and appreciation of the costs and everything else. In other words, you have to keep asking this guy, do you understand? Can you afford an extra 1,000 Rand a month or 500 Rand a month or whatever the case is? With a promise to pay, are you earning enough? It's not just enough to ask him, can he afford it? You have to take necessary steps to assess the person's risk factors. Okay, and I'm sure that there aren't any of us in veterinary practice now that allow our clients to pay debts off that do this kind of stuff. We think if they just fill in a promise to pay, we're all hunky-dory and everything's fine, and we can nail them and hand them over to debt collectors and everything else. If they know the National Credit Act, they can sit back and smile, and you can do nothing about it. So what does this all mean to us as veterinarians? Okay, if you are providing credit to clients, you are the one that has to be the one proving that the client can repay it, okay? It's not a legal obligation that they have to pay you just because they said they could. You have to prove it. Guys, I know I'm harping on this over and over, but this is vitally critical that we understand this. The next part of the National Credit Act that highlights here is that the burden of proof is on you. Okay, did you take the necessary steps? And the National Credit Act does not accept the argument of, well, yes, Your Honor, I asked him and he said he could pay it. Okay, people lie. People want you to fix their animal, and they will tell you whatever you want to hear for you to get to do that operation. You have to actually prove it. They've got to bring you documents and everything if you're doing it in-house. Okay? Now, the problem is with this is that if the client doesn't pay you and you try and hand them over and the client knows the National Credit Act, they can not only refuse to pay you, but they can also drag you into court, which is going to cost you time. And if you want to tell me that your time is worth 4,000 Rand a day and you sit in court for 10 days, that's 40,000 Rand lost income, as well as a whole lot of peed off clients for a 1,000 or 2,000 Rand debt. And it's not your option whether you go to court. It's the person you loaned money to, because the law says that once they have said, I'm not paying you, they have the right to force you to go to court to defend your actions. Whether you want to drop the case or not, it's not up to you. So how do we solve this problem? Okay, well, it's actually incredibly simple. All right, and the answer is let someone else carry the burdens and the risks according to the National Credit Act. And guys, this is what we've been negotiating for 7 or 8 or 9 months now with the financial houses that we're working with this. Okay? So who is this financial house? Well, the product is called Best Vet Finance because it is something which is designed for vets, okay? But the company that is running it is a registered credit provider. In other words, they have already looked at all the regulations and they have complied. They have their license to be able to grant these loans and everything else. Just by the way, as far as the license goes, I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember the amount, but if you're lending out more than, I think it's 10,000 Rand, you need to have a license to do that. Under that, it can be called a casual credit agreement, but the Credit Act still applies. Okay, so Best Vet Finance have set up the whole procedure in place that they can quickly assess the client, and we'll see now how they do it, and they will give us an answer in under 10 minutes. Now, when we sat with the owner of this company, he assured us it would probably be closer to 5 minutes, but 10 minutes is still not bad to find out. Okay? And they do whatever they have to do on their side to comply with the National Credit Act. Guys, this is really, really hugely important because they are taking the burden of proof of debt and proof of payment, etc., away from you as a vet. Again, I go back to what I said before. Allow vets to do what only vets can do. And lending money and negotiating payments to clients who want to pay off is not what vets do best. In fact, I believe they shouldn't do it at all. So what is Best Vet Finance offering? Well, we have 2 parts, and the first one is new credit. In other words, this is the client that is coming up now who needs something done and doesn't have the money. And the second part is past credit or your book debt. They will collect it for you. I'm not going to go into a lot about the collection of the book debt. I just want to quickly look at it very, very briefly. What you do, and you'll have to contact us to get all the regulations because, as I say, I'm not going to cover it today, but you hand over your existing debt to Best Vet Finance. They work on a no collection, no fee basis. In other words, if they don't collect, you don't have to pay them. Now, those of you who have used debt collectors before, there are a lot of them that work on this principle, but there are a lot of them that will charge you a fee regardless of they collect or not. So this is really, really important to me. It makes sound business sense. If they don't collect, you don't pay them. It's a great incentive for them to get their A into G and actually get collection of your money. Now, there's a tax advantage to this as well, and I'm not a tax accountant or a tax lawyer, but I have used this in my own practice, and with the practices that I do business development with, I use it with them as well. Guys, you shouldn't be carrying huge book debts. When your debt gets to about 60 days at the latest, you should be writing it off and claiming that amount back from tax. So when we hand the finances over or the book debt over to Best Vet Finance, you write it off and get the tax relief on it. Okay, as I said to you, they will charge you 25% of whatever they collect. Okay, now that sounds like a lot, but trust me, when you've got a legal backing to the collections, your collections are much higher, so 25% is a very, very small price to pay for it. And what you simply do when they collect the debt is you write the amount back into the person's file, so it becomes an expense to you, an income to you again, and you claim back the 25% as an expense. I don't want to cover this too much. If you need more details, talk to your accountant. If they don't know what I'm talking about, you're welcome to contact me afterwards and I'll help you with this. Guys, remember that in the old days we could choose whether we paid tax on invoice or on receipt, and all the clever ones of us did it on receipt because it means we didn't pay tax until the client paid us. Nowadays you don't have that luxury anymore. You've got to pay on invoice, which means if you provide the invoice for the client, the receiver wants his share of it, and if the client takes you a year to pay it off, it's your money that's sitting in the receiver and in your client's account. So this is a really, really good business tool. Let's move on now to the new credit journey, because this to me is what is hugely, hugely exciting today. So the first step in this credit journey is that the client is presented with essentially an unexpected big bill. Now, what your perception of big is and what the client's perception of big is not relevant here. To some people, that will be a bill of 1,000 Rand, and other people, it will be a bill of 20,000 Rand. But it's something that they weren't bargaining on or banking on when they go to the vet. So the first step of the journey, which is vitally critical to the whole process, is that the client has to be able to pay a 25% deposit. Guys, if they can't afford a 25% deposit, they cannot make use of Best Vet Finance. I'm going to say that again. If the client cannot afford to pay 25% deposit on the amount that you're asking them for, they cannot use Best Vet Finance. And if you do go ahead with the application and everything else without them having paid that, you're breaking the law, guys. Okay, and the whole contract falls null and void, and guess what? You won't end up getting paid. All right. So I'm going to show you a table now in which the client chooses the repayment amount and the period according to what they can afford and with the help of the receptionist. Please don't panic when you see this table. I know it's a big table and it looks very complicated and everything else, but I'm going to enlarge a section and run through it. What I just want you to see on this table on the screen now is in the top left corner, and unfortunately I've cut a little bit of it off, it clearly states interest rate 12%. Charge to vet is 0, and a monthly admin fee is 57. That's 57 Rand. Guys, this is something we have to disclose to the clients. Okay, so let's take an example, and let's say I've just enlarged a little piece of the screen so that you can see it, and let's say left-hand column there says vet funds required. Let's say this client requires 7,000 Rand for this operation. The first thing that they need to do is they need to come up with a deposit of 1,750 Rand. Again, I'm going to say it, if they can't pay that deposit, they may not partake in this scheme. Okay? We can't help them. It's very important when we're reading this table that we explain to them that the interest rate is 12%. We can show them that the next column, which is the fourth one from the left, says loan amount. Their loan will be for 5,250 Rand. Also important, their initiation fee, in other words, this is the fee that the finance house charges to get everything set up, is 655 Rand 50 on that amount. Now you can see it's a sliding scale. I don't know the formula off the top of my head, but it's a percentage according to the National Credit Act that they're allowed to charge. And then lastly, the last orange block there is 57 Rand. So the client says, I need 7,000 Rand. The receptionist says, okay, Wimgert, I need a deposit of 1,750 Rand. He says, that's no problem at all. And she says, how much can you afford to pay off every month? And he says, well, I can pay off about 1,000 Rand. All she does is she simply slides left in that same line and finds the nearest amount to 1,000 Rand. And she says, Wimgert, we can do 934 Rand 72 per month. Will that be okay? And he says, yes. And then she simply looks up to the top and says, well, your loan will then be payable in the amount of 934 Rand 72 for 7 consecutive months. Okay, so run through it again quickly. The amount required for the estimate is down the left side. That is not the loan amount. That is the total estimate that you've given the client. And this table goes up to 20,000 Rand. Okay, I haven't put it in because I've tried to enlarge it. And the maximum period that they can take it over is a year. In other words, I've cut this table off now at 10 months to show you, but it goes to 12 months. So in this same example, the guy says he needs 7,000 Rand. He pays the 1,750 Rand deposit. And if he says that he can afford 1,500 Rand a month, okay, fine. Then his loan repayment becomes 4 months. Okay, in other words, the client decides how much they can afford. I know we're going to have problems with this afterwards. It is a little bit of a mindset change, but we will be available at the, to help people, and I'll give you all those details at the end. So let's move on quickly. The next step in the credit journey is that the client fills in the form which the receptionist gave them. Now, guys, we are moving into a technology age of computers and internet and everything else. We are not going to be sending you these forms. They are on the website, and you download them. You can download and photocopy. You can download and print as many copies as you want to. You can save them on your laptop. You can do whatever you want to, but they are on the website as a template, and you just need to make sure that you have enough in stock. So let's quickly go and have a look at that form. Now, I apologize that it's not very clear. But my scanning technique was not as good as maybe what it should be. But if we have a look there, this is the form that the receptionist then gives to the client. And they start off and they simply fill in their details at the top. Very important that they fill in everything except the 6 blocks from the top on the right where it says reference number. That they leave blank. They must read the little agreement there which allows the system to run its course. They must sign it. They must date it. They must also fill in their physical address, and then there where it says finance details, they put in the amount needed as well as the terms and the installment amount. In other words, this is the way that we can verify that the client understood how much they were taking over what period. If they get a little bit sticky at this stage and they don't want to fill in their bank details, that is not a problem, because once the loan has been, or the authorization for the loan has been granted, we can always give this form back to them. So if they go, well, I don't want to give my bank details yet, no problem. Then just take the rest of it. But it's essential that the rest of it is filled in. My advice would be that you let the client fill it in, and the client has to sign it. Okay? The next thing that happens in the credit journey, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, is that the receptionist will call the telephone number on the poster. Please note, guys, this is not the client that phones. It is the receptionist that phones. And one of the forms that we give you, and I'll show it later on, I'll talk about it again, is where you list all your nurses and receptionists and vets and everything else, because we need to be able to correlate the person phoning to the practice that is phoning. Okay? It's part of the process. So the receptionist phones the number on the phone. Okay? We will provide you with that poster. We will send them out through Licato once you have joined the scheme, the Best Vet Finance possibilities. And we ask you to please put it on the wall near reception. Now, if the receptionist doesn't want to talk in front of the client, or if you as the veterinarian decide bad business practice for the receptionist to speak to the finance house in front of the client, then they can go around the corner. But we want the poster up in reception, and you'll see why. Let's in fact have a look at it. There it is. It's a really nice little poster, and what it just says is, do you need some help with financing the treatment for your pet? Okay? And please note that these numbers that we've got on the poster are dedicated call center numbers for Best Vet Finance. The staff on that side have been trained about what they've got to do and who they've got to ask and everything else. So the receptionist just needs to call one of those two numbers, and they will then get taken through the process. But they must have that previous form that the client filled in with them. Once they've got an answer, now in most cases they will just be able to hold on and get the answer. Occasionally, if there's an overload on the system will show up the number that they are calling from. The call center agent will verify who it is that they're speaking to, and they will call back and ask to speak to Tanya or Tara or Mary or whoever it is. Okay? They will then provide the receptionist with a reference number, which gets filled into that little block, as I showed you, 6 from the top on the right-hand side, and they then take that back to the client, who then completes the rest of the form with the banking details if they haven't already done it, as well as the contract. Now, the contract is not a contract that it is mad and it's 10 pages long and it's all this sort of stuff. Basically what it is it's an agreement and it's an authorization to create a debit. Okay? Please don't panic about this stuff. This is not anything that legally you will be held responsible for. This is the finance house that is registered and has had the nod to go ahead from the National Credit Authorities. Once that's all completed, the receptionist faxes both of those forms, the contract and the initial form, back to Best Vet Finance. And then, vitally critical, please, they must take that 25% deposit. In fact, they should probably take the 25% deposit before they even start filling in all the forms. Because if that 25% doesn't get paid, as I said to you before, the client cannot take part in the Best Vet Finance scheme. Okay, so let's have a look at what's in it for the vet. Because at the end of the day, we all have WIFM tattooed on our forehead. And you all know that WIFM stands for what's in it for me. Well, the first thing I think as a veterinarian when my practice was that it's going to remove a major headache, not only for the vet, but for a lot of the staff involved in it as well. Okay? You don't have the worry of that you're giving illegal financing. Some of you may be a little bit shell-shocked at this stage to realize that what you are doing for your clients currently is in fact illegal, but be that as it may. The next thing is that it takes away crabby staff at the end of the month. And I spoke to one of our colleagues the other day and I had to laugh because he said, man, he said, I want to do this thing. He said, it'll give me back 5 days with my wife. She turns into an absolute monster for 5 days at the end of the month, and she forgets that when she puts the phone down after talking to the clients that haven't paid, that she's now talking to me. So he said, yes, please, I'll get some more time with my darling wife. But you'll take the pressure off your staff as well. Better cash flow planning, because you will be able to know what's coming in and when it's coming in. It's not a question of, well, geez, I hope that the bad debtors are going to pay us this month. All right. Another biggie for me is no more financial euthanasias. I don't know about you guys, but for me, one of the most heartbreaking things, and certainly for the nurses, was the guilt trip of having to put an animal to sleep that we understood we could fix. And the difference between fixing the animal and not fixing it was money. We've taken that away. There's no reason now anymore that you have to do that. Obviously, there are always extremes, but as a general rule, the clients that come to you afford to pay the deposit and then they can go ahead with it. Okay, and once again, my favorite part of this whole thing, we're allowing the vet to concentrate on what's best for the patient. Okay, you don't have to anymore say, well, I actually need to do a 10,000 Rand operation, but I know that Mrs. van Blerk can only afford 1,000 Rand. Let's compromise and use, substandard equipment, or do it in the boot of the car or whatever else it is. You can now go ahead and make your clinical decisions based on what is best for the patient, because the client has an option of finance available now. So let's have a look at what the scheme is based on and how it works for the veterinary practice. I'm not talking about consultations, guys, because this is generally not something that one would use for a consultation. And if it is, well, okay, I'm not even going to go in there, because that was not why the scheme was designed. The scheme was designed really for workups and procedures and protocols and hospital cases and RTAs and the stuff that really ends up being big money. We don't want to finance a guy's vaccine for 600 Rand and let him pay it off over 6 months. Okay. So if we look at a typical hospital bill, 35% of any hospital bill is what we call base costs. Now, base costs are the costs that you are actually physically going to have to pay out. Now, I can already hear some of you jumping up and down and everything else, even though you're muted, saying, oh, but 35% is not enough. Guys, we've looked at a lot of figures on this, and 35% covers those base costs. In other words, if you are going to do a spay, for example, the cost of the surgical blade and the swabs and the interval or the whatever else anesthetic you're using, pre-meds, the actual cost of the drug runs at about 35% of the bill. The next chunk of the bill, and that varies depending on how efficiently and how well run your practice is between 30 and 55%. And those are other variable costs, like your staff costs, your salaries, your rent, your light and water, all that kind of stuff. Now, guys, this is a debate which I'm not going to have now, fortunately, because you're all muted, but it's a debate which opens up a whole can of worms. Are you going to pay those costs anyway, whether you do the surgery or not? And when we're calculating the costs of running a practice, the answer is you're going to pay them regardless of what you're doing. When you're looking at an individual surgery, it can be debated that they have to be covered. But it's not money that is out of your pocket, because if you do 4 spays in a day or 5 spays in a day, this middle section is paid for anyway. The base section goes up the more animals that you buy the Diprovan for, or pre-med or whatever else. Okay. And then right at the top again is the cherry, and the cherry is the profit. Now, the profit could vary anything between 10 and 35%. I'm not going to go into gross profit and net profit for this argument now. What I'm trying to show you in this is that your actual money that you take out of your pocket to pay for any operation is called a base cost, and that is 35%. Now, in this Best Vet Finance scheme, we guarantee you that 35% to be paid. How do we do that? Well, 25% of it is paid by the client deposit, and 10% of it is paid by Best Vet Finance on receipt of the completed contract. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you may not make an immediate profit by doing the surgery, but you're sure as hell not going to make a loss. Okay, so you're not going to be out of pocket by doing the work. You may be out of a little bit of time, but you're not going to be out of money. You're not going to have a huge big Locato bill to pay or something like that because you did the surgery and now you're not getting paid for it. Okay, and the balance of the money, the 65%, is paid as per that schedule. So if the client wants to pay it off over 2 months, you get paid off over 2 months. If the client's going to pay it off over 12 months, you will get the money paid off over 12 months. The details of that, Best Vet Finance will do for you. They will do all the credit agreements. They will comply with the National Credit Act. They will supervise all the debit orders and everything else. All that you have to know is that every month when the money comes in, Best Vet Finance will pay it into your bank account for you. Okay, I hope that's clear. The important part here is that your base cost is 35% and that is guaranteed. The rest you will get. Yes, there is a risk because if the client doesn't pay, Best Vet Finance will obviously take all of their legal action and everything that they can do. But you know what? Out there, unfortunately, are just some crooked people that are crooks through and through. And I mean, I've been to a guy's house with the sheriff, served the summons, and he just smiled and said, pick a spot on the wall in his bar to put it with all the rest of them. Okay, so there is a risk, but your risks are a lot less. Best Vet Finance collection figures are incredibly high, and I'm willing to say, without knowing you personally, that they are better than yours are in your individual collections. So at last, what we're offering is an idea that vets can concentrate on what vets do best. Okay, looking after, fixing, repairing, and healing the beloved pets. And we let the finance house of Best Vet Finance worry about the debts and everything else. We're taking away that whole pain in the backside part of the practice, and we're outsourcing it. And the best part of it is, guys, it's going to cost you a once-off fee of 250 Rand. Hello? This is what we call as a no-brainer. Okay, you don't pay a percentage of the commission of being collected or anything else. Those costs are borne by the client, who is the one at the end of the day who needs the loan. It's not the vet that needs the loan, it's the client that needs the loan. So what do we do from here? Well, the next step is that the practice has to join the financial scheme. Okay, and you do that by going to our website. And on our website, it's a very easy website. You will see all the information is there. The steps of the journey are all laid out for you, and all the forms and everything else are all attached. I just want to make a note quickly now that under the vet agreement, what we call an SLA or a service level agreement, is currently not on the website. I have been promised that it will be there tomorrow. I believe there was a technicality that the lawyers jumped up and down on, and they withdrew it, and they've changed that. It should be scrutinized and given the all clear by this afternoon, and we'll have it on the website tomorrow. So if you're excited about this as I am and you want to join, go and look at the website, but you're just not going to be able to get all the documents yet. There's only one missing. The rest of them are all there. So there's two parts to it. The one is the practice information, and as I said to you before, that's vitally important that you give us accurate information with all the details we require, because that's part of our verification process to know that in fact it is your practice which is calling for the loan. We don't want these loans paid out illegally or incorrectly, and that's why that's so important. And then also that service level agreement, which is not yet up there. You pay the once-off 250 Rand registration fee. Once you've done that, we will send you the necessary posters through Locato, okay? And then all of that's left now is for you to decide, do you want to use one of our offerings or both? In other words, are you going to hand over the book debt, or are you going to start with just a new credit and collect your own debt? Guys, either way, same but different. You decide what you want to do, and we can help you with it. And then the most important thing is that you can stop worrying about client debt. Stop worrying that you are breaking the law, giving them credit. Stop worrying that they're not going to pay you. All these kinds of things, because this is what financiers do. And guys, as I said to you in the beginning, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a veterinarian with 23 years of private practice. I understand the frustrations and everything else, and it's taken us 7, 8, 9 months to negotiate this to cover as many bases as we can so that the vet is not placed at any risk here whatsoever. So what I ask you to do is to go to our website. Very simple. It's www.bestvetfin.com. bestvet.co.za. Obviously, that stands for Best Vet Finance. Have a look at it. My email address is there as well. So that's bruce@bestvetfin.co.za. On the website, you'll find some telephone numbers as well if you want to use them. Go and have a look, see what's going on. If you've got questions, email us, download the forms. But please, guys, the forms can only be downloaded tomorrow because there is only one that is short. The rest of them are all there. But other than that, that's me done. Okay, I am going to just, if you bear with me quickly, I'm going to go into the question section here, and we have got a whole lot of questions that are coming in. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to try and answer as many of them as what I can. I just need to get this open. Okay, and let's start up here quickly. Right, Arius asks, what happens with after-hours cases? Okay, that's a really, really good question. Okay, and unfortunately, we cannot provide a 24-hour service on this thing. The office hours have been extended for us, and they do go until 8 o'clock at night. But in the case of an after-hours case, what my suggestion would be is that you work out your estimate. And guys, if you're not using estimates, hello, start doing them. Okay? Get the 25% deposit from the client and do whatever is necessary to stabilize the animal and to provide pain relief, all the good stuff that we know we can do. And then just be honest with the client and tell them, you can't afford to pay the whole thing. We will have to get financial improvement in the morning. Let them pay 25% of your estimate, and then the next morning, if they can't afford it, then obviously, or if they get turned down by the credit bureau, then it's back in your ball. The ball's back in your court as it was before. Okay. Okay. There's another question here from Candace. Okay, same thing about the 24 hours. Hope I've covered that. Okay. Question from Philippa. Hi there, Philippa. Nice of you to join us. Does that mean that if Best Vet Finance is not paid as per the schedule, the vet will not be paid? Yes, Philippa, that is absolutely correct. Unfortunately, this Best Vet Finance is a joint venture. Okay. In other words, we are guaranteeing you the base costs of 35%. In other words, you're not going to be out of pocket. But if the client is a real rogue and a real baddie and they just refuse, Best Vet Finance House does all their legal things. They've got lawyers. They've got all the legal threatenings. They blacklist. They do all of this stuff. And if that doesn't work, then yes, unfortunately, you are only guaranteed of that 35%. So the profit, as it were, or the other costs are then lost to both you and to the finance house. Remember that you are covered what you laid out. The finance house is obviously out of pocket on that. But there isn't another way around this thing, okay? Because otherwise what has to happen, and we looked at that to guarantee your money, is that then the vet themselves has to then enter into a separate agreement every time with Best Vet Finance, and then you would have to pay a monthly subscription fee to cover those losses. But as I said in the presentation, the percentage of what they collect is very, very high. The other thing to remember is that the risk of having these real bad bastards coming into the scheme are not great, because that is why you phone to get approval first. And Best Vet Finance has a whole computer protocol set up to check people out before then. So that is a very, very small risk. Okay, Marita, thank you very much for your comments. That's very, very nice of you. Right, let's have a look at what Yaku asks. Yaku, how will I know which client's loan is paid? If you pay 10 clients' loans together, do you specify each amount and break it up? Absolutely. Remember that Best Vet Finance is part of a financial house, and as such they have very, very strict legal compliances that they have to do, and you will get schedules of who's paid, how much has been paid into your bank account. There is a full accounting verification process there. You will not be left in the dark, I promise you, Yaku. Right, Jimmy, welcome, Jimmy. What happens with cases that default on their payments? Okay, we've covered that basically. Oh, I see there you said answer through Philippa's question. Okay, sorry guys, I'm just reading as I go along. Right, Tafaru, oh, nice to see you online here, Tafaru, welcome. It is not always practical to get payment in cash in large animal practice. Let's say you have done PDs and invoiced the farmer, who then says he will electronically transfer the money. Does that qualify as a credit? And what happens if the farmer does not transfer the money at the said time? Tafaro, my friend, I sympathize with you large animal guys, because yes, that is a credit agreement. Remember, the law doesn't say that you have to have a written credit agreement. It just says that you've got a credit agreement. And under the new laws in South Africa, verbal agreements are binding agreements according to the Act. But you have to then specify what's going on. So my advice in that case is to try and work out for each farmer what you're going to do beforehand and to try and get deposits. It's unlikely that the farmers will use this scheme, although it is possible that they can. I mean, they're more than welcome to, but they have to comply with those regulations which say that they have paid that 25%, and you have to have, you as the veterinarian or the veterinary practice have to verify by submitting that form that you have received that 25%. Okay. At the end of the day, if they don't pay the 25%, like in your case now, Tafaro, and it's a farmer and everything else, strictly speaking, he has defaulted on the loan. You are the one that is that 25% out of pocket. Best Vet Finance is going to be 10% out of pocket. And if the guy doesn't pay the 10%, chances are that he's not going to pay the monthly premiums, and that's why it's a requirement that you get that 25% before you fax it through. Okay, guys, there's a lot of other questions coming through here. I'm not going to get through all of them now because we are running short of time. Go onto the website, read through, play through it. If you have questions, phone me or email me. Probably better to email me, otherwise you might not get through. I am really, really good with emails. I will answer your questions and we will help you with this. Only thing left to say is I hope you're as excited about this as I am. We've worked really hard on it, and I do know that if somebody had offered me this in private practice, I would have grabbed it with both hands and gotten rid of that pain in the proverbial elbow of the money and the financing. That's all from now. I've just been handed a note quickly to remind you guys, please keep watching your emails. These webinars that we're doing are going to grow and grow and grow. We are planning on doing lots more of them, both educational, business associated, CPD, all that sort of thing. So keep watching your emails, and thanks for attending. Cheers. Goodbye.